So we can start. All right. So Clint, thank you so
Hi.
much. Thank you so much for joining us for doing the
hmm
interview. Do you want to just intro yourself, talk about where you've been at and like what you're doing and how you've been?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. So I guess I've been in the industry for a long time, maybe 15 years, let's say for now. For a lot of that time, I was in LA freelancing at a lot of the motion graphic studios over there. I
Mm.
actually started my in the industry at Buck. So that was like my first job. That was when Buck was first like born. Like I was like employee like two or something. So and
Mm-hmm.
then I freelanced pretty much everywhere. Spent a lot of time at Imaginary Forces, doing film title type of things. And then I jumped around. I did, I worked at like Brand New School and Stardust and a lot of Logan, those
Nice.
types of places. Yeah, and then I moved out here to New York about 8 or 9 years ago, and I was doing my own little studio for a little while. But then recently, I got back into freelancing and then creative directing for different companies. And now I'm currently on staff at PsyOp as one of
Nice.
their senior art directors and team lead type of peoples doing all sorts of things.
Awesome. Really cool. Have you been back to LA recently? I was actually there like a few months ago. I was freelancing out in LA. Um, have you been back?
No, not since
Not since.
COVID. No,
Yeah, yeah.
not jumping on any planes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, oh yeah,
I,
well, yeah, for sure. The no, because I was gonna ask about like how it's changed. Because the few people I talked to out there, they keep talking to me about how like the fires are getting worse and how there's it's getting more dense, more crowded. So there's definitely a story to be told about what's going on in LA, but I'll have to research more into that and talk to some people about how they feel about stuff out there. When were you out in LA? How long ago was that?
I think the last time I was full time out there was around 2010.
2010. Okay.
So yeah,
How did
things have definitely changed, I know, but recent enough that
Do you have a preference? Do you prefer it out in like the East Coast or?
um, I mean, yeah, I think the reason I moved out here was, I mean, partially because my wife's career is out here, but I
Mhm.
definitely like, New York. I love New York and how dense that city is and all that, all
Mhm.
the craziness that is going on there.
Yeah, I know.
And I lived my whole life in California, so, I was ready to try
You
something
just
else.
needed a change.
Like, yeah, I can always go back to LA. It's fine. It's no big deal. But yeah, this
So,
is, I mean, it's good. Been great here. I love it here.
every interview I've done, I kind of because this is so trending right now, just in general, I talk about this with every single person. And I remember specifically with you, we talked about like I think we talked about cloud computing, but we also talked about just like GPU acceleration in
hmm
rendering. And this was, I mean, it was happening at the time, but it was definitely now because of virtual production. It's just kind of like it's officially kind of becoming the norm, right? You think I think we're watching it happen in real time, in real time,
Haha.
where it's starting to take over. So what have you done any forays into like more foray into GPU acceleration? Like what are your thoughts on what's happening in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, since we last talked, I mean, things have been changing. I'd say I wouldn't say at a crazy speed. Like, 10 years ago, I was looking at V-Ray and how they were coming out with like GPU acceleration, like real-time V-Ray. And like, I was like, wow, in 2 years, we're not going to be rendering anymore. But
Yeah.
somehow we still are taking a long time to do renders. So, you see these trends happening and you're going along with them.
Mm.
It's not an overnight thing, but definitely, even in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of new things that have happened. I mean, aside from the obvious GPU renderers, Redshift and Octane, and Arnold kind of switching over to or incorporating GPU, you're seeing a lot of cool stuff like AmberGen, which is a GPU accelerated, smoke simulation, pyro
Mm.
simulation, predominantly for gaming right now, I think, but
Yeah.
could be useful for our purposes for sure. And you're seeing it, used. A lot of things are being ported over, like Houdini. You can use OpenCL on your
Yeah.
GPU. So definitely people are aware that there's potentially a huge performance gain for GPU use. And so yeah, it's definitely a trend, and I'm sure we'll just see more and more of that. And it's definitely been great for production on our side in terms of being able to, design faster and render a little bit faster, and just overall workflow. Anytime you can cut a second off, anything, it's great.
Yeah, no, always. The have you played with Unreal Engine?
Yeah, actually, a little bit this year. I kind of got into it just because I was stuck at home, and I've
Yeah.
always been kind of interested in that. So I said, I'll just do some tutorials and watch some seminars and stuff. So I got into that a little bit. It's interesting.
Do you think it's ready for like, because this is the conversation I have with people where there's definitely kind of a status quo kind of order of operations software. I don't know how to explain it really, but there's a certain way that like VFX software is made and is meant to work because it kind of fits into how the industry is used to working. Is Unreal Engine doing that? Because it is the game industry and it's not exactly the same as
Yeah,
like I don't know, Maya or like Katana or like I don't know where Unreal Engine even fits really because it is so real time based.
yeah. So having spent enough time to understand how it works, and importing and exporting things from it, it's it's its own animal in that it's built to create games and maybe game cinematics.
Mm,
But at the end of the day, it's not an animation program. And I know in the latest one they've added some animation tools, but it basically was, or has always been, reliant on other programs to do the work in, and then you just kind of import that into Unreal, and then it's running code. So example, you have a character that you modeled in Maya, you textured him in Maya,
mm,
you rigged him, maybe you did some animation or whatever, but all that stuff just gets exported out into Unreal. Virtual production, really kind of like a clearinghouse for all this data.
yeah.
So as far as it becoming some sort of competitor or alternative to Maya, I think it's got a ways to go.
Mm,
Um, and also because there's, as it is right now, I think there's limited uses in our industry for real-time performance. I mean, obviously virtual production is something that it's great for.
mm,
Maybe there's, I've read about the mill or whoever doing like real-time like iterations and stuff, like just for various different spots if you need to create like 100 variations
yeah.
of something with live performance. So yeah, definitely it's got its uses, but I think in our industry, a lot of our work doesn't require that kind of real-time performance if you're considering the overhead of having to import it into Unreal, set up shaders in Unreal,
Okay.
deal with kind of the entire change in paradigm, because it's built around, like, its renderer and its lighting system is built around kind of hacky stuff that you do to
Mm-hmm.
make a game run smoothly. But in our case,
Yeah.
we've had ray tracing forever, but
Yeah.
they only introduced it in the last couple gens of video cards. So it's just very different, and I don't see it necessarily making a huge shift in the industry for what we mostly do. But there's definitely some cases where even SAP is using it for certain projects.
Yeah, I remember. I've actually had this. I had this conversation, like what you just brought up, um, like years ago, almost like 8 years ago, where the same topic about real time came up because it's been a thing for a while, and it was the same idea where there's certain requirements in visual effects where you do kind of expect this non-hacky kind of plausible reality, real physics happening. And I had this conversation with a lighting TD, um, and he was saying that like like real time lighting is kind of hacky. It's meant to just suck out as much performance as possible. But sometimes the stuff we do requires, like, especially with refractions. At least back then, I remember with refractions, it was a whole issue that if you wanted refractions to really behave correctly, you couldn't really hack it very well. It wasn't easy to do, and I don't know if it still is.
Yeah, I don't think they're really there yet. So yeah, things that you have to consider are like subsurface scattering. I mean, they're starting to maybe have hacks for that as well, but definitely like heavy refractions and all that is very complex for the GPUs to be able to do real time, and I don't think they're there yet. I think in the latest Unreal they have like a really nice hair system, which is great. So it's moving in that direction. But at the end of the day, it's a gaming tool, and I don't see a ton of benefit on our side at this point.
The How do you feel about virtual production? Have you tried it out? Have you guys done anything like that yet?
I haven't been on any projects that have used it. I've kept an eye on what's going on. With all like the Mandalorian stuff, and because I've been looking at Unreal, it just kind of pops up in my feed here and there.
Right.
It's cool stuff. I think it's great that they can have these amazing screens and update, the backgrounds instantly and all that. I don't know how practical it is for commercials in general. It requires a lot of setup, and you have to go to a special stage, and there's, I think for
There's a
TV, it
budgetary.
makes, yeah, it's not cheap either. So I think for, TV, where you get maybe a little bit more production headway, a little bit more planning involved, it
Mm,
makes sense for that. I don't know how much it'll really affect us, on the commercial side.
yeah. So I mean, this is a popular discussion with COVID now. Well, actually, let's talk about COVID. Like, what are you guys all remote? Are you guys doing all that jazz? Do
Yeah,
you,
we started in March, and haven't been back since. So that's been great. At Everything's been running smoothly. Like, we have a top-notch pipeline, and we're able to
awesome.
remotely log in, and so there really hasn't been a lot of issues technically. I mean, there's a little bit of extra friction, just logging in
Yeah.
remotely, and sometimes things don't work great all the time. But we've still been able to do everything that we did before, just with a little bit of extra effort.
Yeah. So the million-dollar question is, do you guys think you're going to go back 100%?
We are not.
Yeah.
I mean, the the company has invested a lot in getting cloud infrastructure set up so that it's easier for us and all our vendors and freelancers to work remotely. So I don't see us really going back to how it was before, just because it's not totally necessary, as we've proven this year.
Yeah.
Certain jobs definitely will need to be in the same room together. I mean, whether it's because it's secret projects, where there's security issues, or if there's, live things where you need to be in a coloring session, even though we've been doing coloring remotely as well. Um, you know, so there's cases where we'll need to go back to the office, but I think a lot of people might just stay home because, it's less overhead on the companies, and it's become something that people like to do.
Mm.
I personally would like to still go into the office, at least part time, because I like to be in the city and see people. So, but I think it's definitely just shook the card a little bit, and opened up some doors and different ways we can handle, how we do our work day to day.
Yeah, most of the responses I get around that are kind of, it's like it's going to be like a 40-60 kind of thing where they're going to try to keep 60% remote, but there's going to be kind of like this core group that has to, maybe conceptualize projects, maybe do pitches, things like that, where you kind of have to be in a room together. Um, so a lot of offices are going to downsize and rents are going to go down, which
Yeah,
is
it's definitely a problem for commercial real estate.
they're going to open it up for, yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if we can speak about real estate. We're not really experts about that.
Yes.
My prognosis is that they're going to turn it into apartments, and then I don't know, maybe more colleges will have more students or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who knows?
I don't know. I feel like New York always figures out. I don't know. New York always figures it out somehow because there's been so many like things happening. It always kind of comes together in the end. They'll find a way to make their
Yeah.
money back, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Prices may change, but people will always have, an attraction to the city. And, you know, if things are back to normal in a couple of years time, like, who knows how we'll all feel. And maybe we'll be, there would be a huge movement, like, let's get back in the office.
yeah, yeah. That's gonna be so weird. People are gonna campaign to go back to the office. It's like nothing makes sense anymore. So I'm gonna ask kind of an ignorant question because this is a question that I've always wondered about. but I feel like I never had the courage to ask. What is the
Hmm.
difference between an art director and a creative director?
Well, I mean, if you look at it from a like an agency, perspective, a creative director tends to just focus on the concept of the campaigns and coming up with, the overarching creative goals and,
Hmm.
execution of, how they want to approach a problem. And I think the art directors traditionally are more kind of focused on just the visual aspects of it, how they execute that. Because you also have these copywriters who take care of all the writing and all the
Hmm.
storytelling. So, coming from that history, in our industry, we we don't have a lot of creative directors. I mean, usually those people are the heads of the companies at this point. It's you have directors who really have the vision for any sort of commercial, and
Hmm.
they sell that in their pitch. And then you still have art directors who kind of are more in the day to day, like how do we execute this and make it look beautiful, and how do we they design, and they work with the everyone to really make sure that the product comes out how the director wants it.
Hmm. Have you been in both roles?
Yeah, I have.
Do you
So
have a
it's
preference?
it's good. I mean,
Obviously, you prefer the job you have right now.
it's nice to be directing your own job and to have the influence and have be able to kind of have a creative vision for something.
Hmm.
But I also do enjoy kind of the getting your hands dirty and being working with a team and executing a job and guiding that process, because it's really challenging, and there's a lot of you get your hands involved in a lot of different things. And
Hmm.
I personally like to design, and I like to do 3D, and I like to work with comp people, and
Hmm.
it's something really gratifying about really you get really hands on with the project and make sure that it comes out to like the level of quality that you want.
Yeah, yeah. So something we kind of like, I like to delve it is, I like to try to get people to kind of prognosticate as much as possible, and it's to like kind of look into the future on how they feel
Hmm.
things will go. And it's kind of interesting to do that right now because there's just a lot of stuff going on. Like we have virtual production happening, we have cloud computing is kind of taking over, which is actually, I'm going to ask you about that. And just like, this industry is really dynamic and it's constantly changing, and things are always kind of moving into unexpected directions. So, quick question about cloud computing. Do you, in your experience, or I mean, I don't know how much you can say about what PsyOp does, but are you guys cloud native, or do you remote in to machines that are in an office?
Right now we're in a hybrid. We have machines that are in our physical offices that we've had.
Hmm.
Those are the traditional kind of machine room computers that we use, and we have been remoting into those, but we are moving into a cloud only platform where we'll just log into machines that are run by a service, and you'll just log out when you're done, and it's those machines can be anywhere.
Yeah. So, what is is that the preference, and why is it the preference? It's my
um,
preference. Like that's kind of what I like to do because
I
I've been
think,
doing cloud native for a little bit. But how do you feel about it?
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of an ideal, because who doesn't want to be able to just log in from a boat in the middle of a lake, and and do their work, and
Hmm.
not have this giant box next to you. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the goal. There's, I mean, we're moving there for sure. It's very close. There's all the infrastructure is there. It's kind of that last mile problem where it's like making sure your connection is good enough where because we're
Hmm.
working with stuff where you need great color depth, and
Yeah, yeah, for
you
sure.
need to be able to you know you need responsiveness because you're working with artists, and you can't have some janky, like bad connection, like
Hmm.
where there's no smooth detection on the computer when you're using your brushes and things like that. So there's a lot of things like that that have to be considered. But um, yeah, I think, is it beneficial to everyone? Definitely. From a business perspective, there's costs involved in in leasing these machines, and that has to be weighed versus cost of the overhead of buying your own machines and maintaining those
Mm-hmm.
machines. Um, so I don't know how the costs will affect the business in the long run, um, but it seems like just having the virtual machines is something that people want to move towards, and maybe after trying it for a little while, we'll come back with some answers to see like if it makes sense for everyone.
Yeah. So how do you think this is gonna play out? Like, how do you imagine like creative production being in the future with like kind of this like semi-remote kind of cloud native stuff? You were saying like working off like on a boat somewhere. I actually kind of have a story about that because I did very briefly address a note once on a Greek island in like a small hotel, which I think is close. It's close to a boat. I'm almost on the boat. So you think is that kind of like the future where it's kind of like how do you like explain it? It's going to be more you're going to seek out the talent wherever it is instead of just wherever you happen to be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this has been going on for a while now. I mean, a lot of vendors are in South America,
Mm-hmm.
in Europe, and in Asia, so in India. So there's that's already happening.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, do I care where the person working on my project does his work? No. As long as the communication infrastructure is there and they're doing the work, I don't care if he's on a boat. It's more of a question of, is everyone going to do this? Probably not. um,
Yeah.
there's you can't replace the synergy of people in an office, working as a team, even if it's just it's when you're in a room with a bunch of other people, it's easy to communicate, and random ideas happen and all sorts of synergies happen, that you're not going to get if you're isolated. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people will say, hey, it's best if we all just fan off into the wind and then work remotely. I don't think that's the answer. But I do think it's going to be a hybrid for sure. I'm not gonna say for
Mm-hmm.
sure, but I believe it's going to be a hybrid, and
Yeah.
a lot of people are going to spend more time at home, which is probably great for them, and and companies can maybe have less space, and but yeah, it'll be a balance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One more thing. I want to talk about kind of VR and AR, and because I think you're the first art director that we talked to, so I want to kind of see how you feel. Have you worked in on VR or AR projects? Do you feel like that is also something that's going to take off more than it is now? And how do you feel about it? Is it like how is it how is it to work in that kind of like a creative realm?
Yeah, I haven't been on any VR AR jobs at SciUp. I've only had my experience peripherally, and also playing with Unreal Engine on my own time a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do I do think it's, I mean, the last company meeting we had, a certain percentage of the company's revenue came from these real time projects,
Mm-hmm.
not an insignificant amount. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that going away. It's it's basically the team of people that work on that are specialists in Unity and Unreal, so they're coming from that silo, and
Okay.
but we still need to do animation in Maya. We still need to create our assets in Maya, and you could do your simulations in Houdini. So there's definitely always that overlap. I think one of the things that they did recently was like a real time Clash of Clans. I don't know if it was a concert or some sort of live event that they do every year for Clash of Clans, and this was all virtual, and they had a live performer, and it was all rendered in Unreal real time, and that was really great. Like it looked amazing,
Mm-hmm.
for something that was real time, and um, so I think they're going to continue to do those types of jobs. The client was happy with that, and there's definitely some other
Mm-hmm.
stuff Stop is doing with Unreal.
If you had to give like a college student advice, would it be should they learn Unreal Engine or Unity? or which one's actually the preference? Because they're kind of like,
I can't say definitively if there's a preference. Industry-wise, my instinct is that Unreal tends to have a better real-time or realistic look to it. I think the renderer is a little bit better. I have very limited exposure to Unity. I mean, they do beautiful stuff as well, but if you're talking about doing close to, photoreal type of stuff, and if you look at all the virtual production stuff that's happening with like Mandalorian, that's all being done with Unreal.
okay.
But for college, at the end of the day, you really just need to focus on what you like to do. You can't learn all the programs out there. There's too many.
Yeah, for sure.
Unreal is very specialized. So if you're into gaming and virtual production type of stuff, then yeah, definitely that's the way to go. But if you're more interested in just the craft of animation and or rendering or effects and things like that, then stick with what we know, which is Maya and Houdini and all the programs that are the bread and butter of our industry.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I think that's a really great, a really great place to end. Um, just giving some advice to like students about what they should do because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on, and like I honestly don't know what anyone should do.
Yeah, I mean, I think schools now are really good, and a lot of people in our industry are teaching at these schools, so they're
Yeah,
aware of
yeah, they're aware of
what
everything
the
that's
right.
going on.
Yeah, they're not wasting their time. So and they're learning so much more than like I ever did when I was in school. So it's awesome. And it's
Yeah,
the level of artistry that's coming out of schools is just amazing now.
awesome. All right, thank you, Clint. Thank
Yeah,
you for
thank you.
getting
It's
on this.
nice to talk to you.
Yeah, always great to talk
It's
to
good to
you.
see you as well.